Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, everyone. This is Marty McDermott, the president of Franchise Interviews, and I can't start today's show without talking about the ISO 10002. You know, some people just love to complain, but companies have a responsibility to care. The International Organization for Standardization, ISO, has revised ISO 10002, the standard for complaint handling. This document enables organizations to foster a customer-focused environment open to feedback, heightening their customer satisfaction. You can get the ISO 10002 standard from the American National Standards Institute, ANSI, the U.S. member body of ISO. Visit ANSI.org/complain to learn more. That's ANSI.org/complain to learn more.
Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews. Welcome to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship. Listen to interviews with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys. And now, welcome your host, Marty McDermott, and Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 13 years now, we've been asking the entrepreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and we have a great show today. Well, we're meeting with a Silverback Self Defense franchise opportunity, a professional self-defense company that specializes in group, corporate, and individual training classes. Founded and owned by Robert Webre, Silverback Self Defense is passionate about helping people learn how to protect themselves and save lives. Hi, Robert. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Marty. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Robert. It's great to finally have you on the show. We always like to ask our guests, where are you calling from this morning, Robert?
So I'm calling from Cypress, Texas, which is about 30 minutes northwest of Houston.
Oh, nice. Okay, how's the weather there today, Robert?
Yeah, I normally tell people Houston, and then if you know where Houston is, everybody does, and then you know where Cypress is. Right. We're having we're having great weather. We're in the low 80s and getting ready. You know, considering it's the end of May, we're getting ready to hit summertime where we'll be in the hundreds every day. So happy with the temperature right now.
I get it. That's fantastic. You know, it was interesting. I researched, your franchise, over the last week, Robert, and it's great information. I thought, to even talk, before we talk about the history of Silverback, I mean, you have a very impressive resume, and I think that's what kind of led to Silverback Self Defense. Maybe we can kind of start there, because I think that's a good place to begin.
So, I started training in martial arts when I was young, and I trained because I was bullied as a child. And so, martial arts has been a vehicle for me. I tell people when I'm with them, learning martial arts literally has saved my life. Took me from somebody who was shy, introvert, to being able to stand in front of groups and crowds and compete on international stages and events, and have the self-confidence to be able to do what I do. You know this as well as I do. One of people's most fears is public speaking, and I get to speak. I get to speak in front of groups and crowds and people every single day, and so, but. I wasn't always. That wasn't always the case, and when I was younger, I hit my growth spurt a little bit later, and so as a child, learning martial arts, and then as an adult, my oldest daughter wanted to do martial arts, so I got back into training in traditional Taekwondo, and that she was 11 at the time, and now she's getting ready to be 35.
Wow.
And so we started training. It was a great bonding experience for the two of us. then I didn't have any plans to have a martial arts business when I started. I was one of the overweight parents in the back of the room as my child trained, and watching her, and then I decided, I've done this before, I could do it again, and I owned another company at the time, and when that company, we hit a recession in Houston, and that company kind of dissolved itself. I had the opportunity. I was still doing martial arts and had a passion, and being able to then open up a full-time martial arts school, and that was almost 16 years ago. And so I've owned a school in Houston, in Cyprus, teaching full-time martial arts. But through Taekwondo, which was my first, kind of love, I've been able to travel the world. I've competed on 4 different continents. I've won two international medals in competition. I'm now currently a 6th-degree black belt in Taekwondo, and then in the meantime, with training with that, I've also become an instructor in Krav Maga, which is Israeli self-defense, which a lot of people know that. And then also I've trained in jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and Gracie style. I'm not an instructor, but I've done a lot of training in that for the past 10 years. I'm also a NRA certified pistol instructor, and then I teach licensed to carry classes in Texas for people who want to carry their pistol. And then I'm also a refuse to be a victim instructor for the NRA. So I tell people every day, from starting where I started to going where I am today, I have the best job in the world. I get to get up every day, and people pay me to hit them.
That's fantastic.
My clients pay me to hit them, and they bring me back, and then my customers pay me to hit them. There's no other job in the world like owning a self-defense business.
It's very impressive. When I was reading your resume, Robert, and it was interesting because I said to myself, what was the catalyst, for starting Silverback Self Defense? I have to tell you, we really haven't, been doing this show now 13 years, and I don't think I've had your type of concept on the show in all of that time, and so I was so excited to interview you. So how did the whole thing come about? Because, you guys are really unique in the marketplace. How did the idea come about then?
Oh, yeah. So I agree, so I'll try to not make it too long of a story, but a couple of years ago, I actually read an article in a HR magazine for corporate wellness that said corporations were hiring people to come in and train their staff in self-defense. And, obviously now I tell people this all the time, Marty, today's world in the last 20 years has changed so much when it comes to self-defense. When you and I were growing up, we didn't go to school worrying about active shooters. We didn't go to work worrying about active shooters. Columbine literally changed the world, how we have to deal with things. And right now, you see where, even with the COVID-19 coronavirus shutdown, as things starting to open up, we've already had 4 active shooters situations that are happening. And so it was kind of a perfect storm for me. So my martial arts school has about a 5-mile radius where we really kind of touch in about a 5-mile radius. We've been very successful. We've been here for a long time, but we never really, Houston, obviously, giant city, we never really ventured outside of our 4 walls. So I read this article, and I said, you know what? It was probably 2016 when I read it. And I said, I can really do that. I could create a concept of taking what I know from all of my training and creating a program that I could go out and market to corporations. So really, that was kind of how it started. 2017 was really our first true year in business. And it was one of those things where, we've been, we've had a lot of adversity. 2017, we got up and going, and then Hurricane Harvey hit Houston.
Right.
And that really,
yeah.
My corporate location in 2.5 to 3 days got 52 inches of rain.
Wow. Oh, jeez.
I actually had to evacuate my house. I never flooded, but I had to evacuate my house and walk out in waist deep water with my whole family to a shelter in 2017. So the catalyst, of starting it and transitioning into an actual business. But what I found was as I was going out to these companies, and I know I sent you some of, we worked with Fortune 100 companies. And that have hired us, people would say, well, is this a franchise? And no, it's just me. Well, your branding is great.
Wow.
You should be a franchise. And that was, and I heard it over and over and over again. God, your branding is so good. It's so strong. You got such a great brand. And then, obviously, people love the product and what we're doing, and we're very unique in how we deliver our product. We really have created a system. So fast forward to the end of 2018, I met Chris Connor from Franchise Marketing Systems at a franchise show. And I approached him and said, hey, I have this concept that I think is franchisable, but I need to know somebody in the industry in franchise. Is this really franchisable? Can somebody do this? And so he kind of went back to his team in Georgia, and he came back to me and said, for sure, we can franchise this. And so we've been working for the last year, basically, on now we have everything set up to where we are a franchise. And then today, as of today, we've actually sold or awarded our first territory here in Houston, and we're in negotiations for our second one here in Houston. So, not a rags to riches,
exciting.
But also for me, it was this is kind of the culmination of a dream that started 4 years ago to be able to do this.
It's exciting, Robert, for you. And they always say like the first franchise is always, it was one of those highlight moments, in a franchise. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard this story where, a lot of big franchises that have been on our show, that was the catalyst, the same as your story. As someone said, is this a franchise or can I buy one of these? And that was always the spark. It's such a common story, and I think that's really how you have something. And when I was looking at the services, it's really very impressive because you provide a number of different services. If you're meeting with a prospective franchisee, Robert, how do you typically describe Silverback Self Defense to, let's say, a prospective franchisee, because you do have so many different services?
Yeah, so what I tell people is we own or we offer a mobile self-defense training company.
Yeah.
And so like you said earlier, we are really in a very unique and very created niche that I've created for mobile self-defense. We go to the customer. That's really what sets us apart. Okay, I've been in the martial arts industry for 20 plus years, and a lot of martial arts schools, like you probably have martial arts schools right down the street from you. They'll do a seminar in hopes that somebody will then turn around and sign up to come into their space. And I did that for years. We did seminars to get people to come in and sign up. Well, that touch point is only in their radius of who's going to be willing to drive to them. What we do is we take that time commitment out of it and we drive to the client. So whether it's an individual, like right now, our individual private training, semi-private, and family training right now during the coronavirus has exploded because people are stuck at home. They have more time. Their schedule is open because they can't go out and do anything. So our private training is through the roof. Now, obviously, our corporate training doesn't exist right now because no one's gathering together corporately. But that's the great thing. That's the great thing about our business. We're down volume-wise, but we're still doing business because of the suite of products that we offer. Everyone wants to feel safe. Everyone wants to know how to defend themselves. And we give people that ability to do that. And so when I'm describing my business to somebody, that, you know, I tell them we bring customized on-site self-defense training to you. So if you're calling me up on the phone and you're saying, Robert, I want you to come out and train my 17-year-old daughter who's getting ready to go to college how to defend herself when she goes to college, we're going to have that conversation, and we're going to go through that information. If you're calling me up and saying, hey, my 10-year-old is being bullied, now that's where, you know, I shine, because then I call on personal knowledge, and we have a curriculum that we have a curriculum that we've developed over 20 years of how we teach children how to deal with being not only physically, but verbally, emotionally, and now cyberbullied. We created this, and so we're going out and, you know, we're teaching these kids, you know, how, because we have kids today who are even younger and younger who are being bullied and who are committing suicide from being bullied.
Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's an amazing model, Robert. When I was reviewing it, when I caught the whole mobile aspect of it too, and then I said I get it, you know, because like you said, you know, I mean, you're probably willing to travel, you know, as you said, 30 miles, 40 miles, you know, whatever it may be, you know, but I mean, and you're also, you know, in doing this show such a long time, you know, a lot of times that location or where you have to get a place, you know, whether it's a restaurant or a dojo or anything like that, it's always a big obstacle for a lot of new franchisees, you know, is that location factor. You don't have to worry about that, or your franchisees don't have to worry about that, do they?
No, and that's one of the biggest benefits that I tell people of when they're looking at the concept. You can be up and running and out delivering product in a very quick time, and you have no hard overhead because you have no space to. Now, we set the model up to where if you want to have a space, we teach you how to do it because we're really good at doing what we do. But we highly recommend for someone to do it, as 90+% of my business is mobile. 10% of my business that I create in my location because I already pay rent here. But I really have built it, and I teach people intentionally, go after the 90%. You want the 90%, and you don't want to have overhead because, like, I don't know how much you really follow martial arts, but this coronavirus is killing people. You know, it's killing businesses because their landlords can't not have any rent paid to them. Right. They can't pay any rent. They can't get anybody in their buildings, and so we are. If you had a business model like what we do right now, you wouldn't have that overhead hanging over your head.
Right. It's a very clever model. And, you know, when I was looking at I'm sure you get this all the time, but the logo and the truck, you know, I mean, that's a moving billboard, isn't it? I mean, when you're traveling from point A, B, and you have, several thousand people see it on a daily basis, I mean, it just really stands out. I don't know who came up with the logo, but I thought it was from a marketing perspective, I thought it was very clever.
Yeah, so I always tell people, everything that you see that you think is great is me. Everything that you think that's terrible is me. And
that's great.
I am the end all be all. If it works great and it comes off great, then if it totally tanks, it's still me. But I have an incredible graphic person that I work with who. What I do, really, honestly, is I send this company, so it's a lady that owns it, and I send her, when I want to do something, I say, this is what I want, this is how I want it to look, and she makes everything we do look fantastic and keeps it in the brand. So when we started with the logo, I kind of said, here's what I kind of want. I want a shield.
Right.
I want a shield. I want protection to be in our logo, because that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're teaching people.
Right.
And then you know, I joke all the time, the silverback monkey is me. You know, I'm the old gray monkey, and so I said, here's kind of what I want it to, you know, really look like. And then the guy who works with me here locally, who did my truck wrap, same thing. You know, I went to him, and that's what he does for a living, and I said, here's kind of what I want. Let's make this happen. And that's one of the few things that our franchises have to have. That is our rolling billboard. We get calls. It's so funny. I get text to my phone in Houston traffic. Hey, I'm sitting right behind you. Call me.
Isn't that incredible? It's amazing. It's a moving billboard. You know, particularly in your area. You know, you have a lot of traffic in that area. You know, a lot of exposure. You know, from that marketing perspective, I thought it was very clever. You know, I thought it was really well done. You know, so it's just fantastic. Does technology play a role in your business, Robert? It's probably not a high technology business, but, you know, I guess, you know, social media and things like that are probably important, or certainly will be important in the future, won't it?
So obviously technology, we are, well, let me just say, let's do it this way. We are a high touch business. Mm-hmm. Or we have been.
Right.
So now what we're working on, so this time of the year for me, June, July, August, my biggest base of business is teenage girls getting ready to leave to go to college. They're going to live on their own for the first time. They don't really have a working knowledge of what to do and how to do it. They've lived at home. Right. Parents are taking care of them. And we're now, and so parents, we every weekend we would be having seminars teaching girls and preparing them to leave. Well, we're not having that. Right. So how technology is changing is we're now taking that seminar and we're filming it and we're putting it into a package that we can then sell to a parent who still wants their child to get some training, and we realize it's not hands-on training, and it's not like what you would get from us. But if you have a parent who wants their child still to get trained but doesn't feel comfortable sending them into a group environment, we are going to give them an option. We're going to give them an option to have. Now, more and more people today, because of what's going on, have become comfortable with learning online. And so we do the way I teach instructors to teach a technique is we kind of take that and teach it in the kind of the same way we're teaching it to a student. So if I was going to teach you how to hit someone, we're going to film it and we're going to talk about the ins and outs of it and then tell you practical ways to practice where you are. You're not going to be an expert, but you're still going to have some. And then the situational awareness part that we deliver in the seminar is going to be filmed also, and then also presented in the package as a PDF to where they can actually read the information and watch me talk through it, and then they can read it and watch me talk through it. So they get both. They get me doing a video of it, and then they get a hard copy to read it, and then that way they can go over it. So it's I tell people all the time, the technology, the being quarantine has forced me into more technology. You know, our YouTube page. We you know, if you look at my YouTube page for Silverback before coronavirus, there were hardly any videos. I put a video up every maybe 6 months. Now there's a video up every other week because I have no other choice. I have to. I'm giving content to my followers that I can't give to them normally. So that's where technology
is very clever.
It's yeah.
That's clever. In your industry, I guess it's safe to say, I mean, you're part of a big industry, Robert, because, you know, this is a problem. You know, when I was reading the literature, there was something in there that, you know, should mention to our listeners. It said workplace violence costs U.S. employers an estimated $120 billion annually. That's a pretty big number, isn't it?
Well, it's a huge number, and people don't realize when you look at workplace violence, it can be, I mean, even if you take active shooter out of the picture, because when you hear people today hear workplace violence, that's the first place they go. But workplace violence is way more than that, and it's educating people. So let's just take a look really quick at a snapshot of in the past 5 years how much it's changed in corporate world in sexual harassment.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at that, and then you look, and it's the same thing with workplace violence, where people don't necessarily talk about it, but then it happens all the time. And then when we go into a company, we're talking to employees about how to be safe at work, and then also how to be safe at home, and how to be safe going to and from work and to and from home. And we are a corporation looks at us as a value-added service to helping their employees feel safer.
Yeah, it's so important. Here's an interesting question. I don't know if anyone's ever asked you, Robert, but what's been one of the most interesting things that's happened to you since launching Silverback Self Defense? I imagine you probably have like 1,000 stories if you and I were having a cup of coffee together. But does anything stand out over the years?
So obviously a couple of things. One, I've been fortunate enough to be interviewed on TV locally a couple of times. And funny story was I was at home one night, and then I'm watching the CBS Evening News, and my face is on the CBS Evening News because the national news picked up the local story. So that was kind of on that note. And then I got referred to do a corporate seminar for the Houston Astros, not for the players, but for the staff. And I'm a huge baseball fan, so I got to actually do a corporate seminar in Minute Maid Park where the Astros play. So I think those are two of the more interesting things that have happened for me as the founder. It's always interesting when the news is wanting to talk to you, and then it was kind of cool being in the stadium. So. But there's a lot. I could talk to you for a long time about.
Maybe we could talk about your franchisees, Robert. I mean, what types of characteristics will you be looking for in your franchisees? Will anything be important that you say, okay, this person would be a good match for Silverback Self Defense? Sure.
Yeah, and we definitely, the kind of the new term is we have an avatar. We have somebody that we look at, and big thing we want is someone who's passionate about teaching people how to be safe. They have to have you got to have a passion for what we do. It's not like you're going to buy in another type of a franchise where you could be an absentee owner, but you got to really have a burning desire to teach people how to be safe. We look at somebody who is in the military or transitioning out of the military, police, firefighters, EMS. They've already demonstrated a willingness to serve and protect. Yeah. And so they're a great candidate for us. Plus, we offer a good discount because we appreciate the fact that they are serving us. But like the gentleman that I'm talking to right now, we're negotiating. He works for an oil company, and he's a group fitness instructor. So he doesn't have but he has the ability, because one of the big things you have to be able to do is stand in front of a group and be able to impart. You got to be able to impart information into a group, and you got to be able to be engaging enough to keep a group. Our average group size is anywhere from 30 to 40 people, and so you got to be able to keep that. You got to be able to keep that group engaged in what you're doing and make it enjoyable and be serious at the same time. So, they don't have to have martial arts experience per se, Obviously,
right.
if they do, it doesn't hurt. What
Sure.
I always tell people, you don't have to be a black belt, but you have to be passionate about doing it. So the gentleman that is our first territory is in Katy, Texas. He's a retired, well, not retired, but he was in the Air Force. He served in the Air Force, and he left the Air Force, and then he's actually studied a couple of different martial arts, but he worked in high-tech network security. And so, he has the ability to stand in front of people and present, and he understands how to do that. But he's also got that, background from being in the military where, he has some of the same kind of, qualifications and characteristics we're looking for. So
that's great. I mentioned the military is probably a good match too, Robert, in the sense that they could follow your system too, because military, of course, they're very good at, following rules and procedures and things like that. I guess the same with policemen and things like that, but I imagine that would be a good match, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it is. And that's kind of the same, the thing we talk about all the time is, this, and I have to explain to people a lot of time, you're buying a franchise because you're buying a system. The system's been proven.
Right.
We don't want somebody, as an example, we don't want somebody that comes in and says, well, I don't want to do that. Well, then you don't want to own our franchise. If you don't want to, we know what success is. We've been successful.
Right.
If you want to be successful and you can follow the model, then you'll be successful if you can follow the model and put in the work. But, you don't buy a Subway and go, hey, you don't buy a Subway franchise and go, hey, I want to sell pizza.
Right, exactly.
What would the training? You're buying a Subway because you want to sell sandwiches.
Right, because you appreciate the system, right? And it works, as you said. Just follow the system, and you'll get the same results. What would the training be like, Robert? I mean, for the new franchisees, would they come to Texas? Is that how it would work, and they would be trained there?
Yeah. So our training is set up over the course of a weekend and a week. So, either the front end of the week or the back end of the week, about 7 days. They come in, they go through our training system. We get them all set up. A lot of it is learning how to teach the way we teach, learning the techniques we teach.
Right.
Going through actually, seminars, and then also working with our staff on the back end. We have somebody that does all of our social media and marketing that would go through for their area. Also, the person who would teach them how to set up their events in the CRM. Everything for the events in our CRM is, it's all just cookie cutter. They just go in, it's already set up. They plug in their information for their area, and then their clients they go out and register through the CRM. And so all of the behind the scenes, even sometimes running a business, being the fact that we've been small business owners for the last 20 plus years, teaching them, the ins and outs of running a small business, best practices, and then, hands-on, getting them to actually feel comfortable in the system and teaching.
Right. How would you describe, because you've been doing this such a long time, Robert, how would you describe a typical day, if there is such a thing? I imagine that, every day could be a little bit different, right? Sure, there's similarities and things like that, but because you're dealing with different types of clients and different scenarios, there would be also some variety throughout the day. But is there such a thing as a typical day for a franchisee?
Well, obviously, being a small home-based business, being a mobile business, very, very similar to what you think about, business owners spending quite a bit of time what we want from a business owner, from a franchisee, is they are becoming the self-defense person for their territory. So they're out marketing, they belong to a chamber of commerce where they're doing chamber of commerce events. They belong to like a B&I group where they're networking with other business owners. And so a lot of learning how to spread the brand where you are is networking, doing different events and then following up on leads. The way our CRM works, the lead comes in for a potential customer, and then they can turn around and be able to have a conversation, what they want, send out a quote, follow up on that, schedule the appointment, and then on days where they have seminars, going out to the seminars and actually doing the seminars and training the people in the seminars. And so, every day, every week is a little bit different, but because of the products that we have, one day you might be teaching real estate agents how to defend themselves when they're showing a house. The next day you might be teaching a group of Girl Scouts. You might be teaching a group of Girl Scouts. The next day you might be at you might be at a corporation, where you're dealing with a bunch of corporate executives. And so, I tell people all the time, me, it's fun. I get up every day and go out and deliver our message to people. And so that's kind of what, I think of as a typical day for a business owner is the same, and then also going through, the part of what they get from us is ongoing training. So as things, change and progress, there's always constant updates, things that are happening, and we are always we're always improving our product. So a lot of what our franchisees get is video based. So if we're going to talk about something specific is happening, we're going to shoot a video. They're going to get a video update and say, hey, if this is happening right now, we need to address this. Here's how you do it.
You've been doing this a long time. In studying your background, Robert, it seems to me like, you have the traits and qualities of an entrepreneur. I think you said earlier you weren't sure, if I asked you 20 years ago if you thought you'd be doing this, you might say, you're crazy. But, it really turned into a successful business. So you've got the traits and qualities of an entrepreneur. What advice would you give to our listeners in their quest to buy a franchise? Because now that you're in that, franchise arena, that there's a lot out there. But, a lot of our listeners are very confused. They don't even know where to begin because there's all these different choices. So, from everything you've learned up to this point, I guess the question is, what advice would you give to our listeners?
So I'll tell you this. I used to teach martial arts for a community college right down the street from me. And I would teach 5 days a week, 5 different classes. And I would at the end of every semester, I would tell them the exact same thing I'm going to tell you that I would tell somebody looking to buy a franchise. Find something that you're passionate about that you would do for free and figure out a way to make money.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, Marty. I would teach martial arts, and I would teach people how to defend themselves. People say, well, if you won the lottery, what would you do? I always say I would teach more people. Because
that's it, right? You do what you want.
If money is the only issue, I would teach more people. The reason I franchised Silverback is I have a vision for us being able to reach people not only all across our country, but eventually all across our world on how to be safe. And so my best thing is, so let's say you got a person who's looking for a franchise and they really love cars. They need to look into having an automotive franchise, and same thing. If you got somebody who loves restaurants, you look into a food service. You got a teacher who loves to teach, look into education. But whatever it is, you have to be passionate about it to wake up every morning and want to go do it. Because this as well as I do, the biggest mistake people think you're going to buy a franchise and you're going to sit back and money's going to roll in and you don't have to do anything. That ain't happening. That's not real world.
Exactly.
You got to be excited. You got to be excited about what you're going to go out and do, because if you're not excited about what you're doing, it's going to come across in what you do. What's always, no matter what I've done, it is what's made me successful is I'm passionate about what I do and I love what I do, and it comes across to my clients.
Right. Yeah.
And and that's why I said, for when we're looking for somebody who wants to be a franchise owner, I want somebody who would teach somebody how to defend themselves for free and show them how they can earn a living doing it.
I loved your analogy of saying, if you hit the lottery, Robert, you would still continue doing what you're doing. I think that's the true test. You remind me of a quote from Al Pacino once. He was interviewing with this gentleman, James Lipton, and James Lipton says to him, he says, if you died and went to heaven, what would you say to God? And he would say, what time is rehearsal practice? In other words, his heaven to him is acting, you know what I mean? And it's the same for you. You're doing what you love to do, and your Mondays are the same as your Fridays, and your Fridays are the same as your Sundays. It's just, and I hear it in your voice, as you speak with conviction, that you have that passion, and I think it's just it makes all the difference. So I think it's great advice for our listeners. So, as the founder of the company, I could ask you, where do you see Silverback Self Defense, Robert? If you could look into a crystal ball, maybe 3 years down the road or 5 years down the road, where do you see the organization?
And that's a great question. So, when we started 2020, and it seems so long ago, 2020.
Yes,
we've only gone for 5 months, and it seems like 5 years. My goal. So just so my goal for 2020 was to sell or award 20 territories. Now, obviously, that was we don't think that's going to happen. With what's going on, but that was, I set a goal, and you already know this. The first ones are the hardest, and as you start to get traction. So in 3 years, I would love to be in 50 of the major cities in the country, and then in 5 years to be in 250, and that type of growth. Because here's the thing that I know about my product is there's not anybody out there doing what I'm doing. You could go out and try to find somebody, but you're not going to find somebody doing what I'm doing. It's not like you're buying another franchise that there's 100 of them and 100 competitors.
Right.
And you got to go out and you got to go out every day and try to compete with 100 guys selling window blinds. There's not.
Yeah.
And so I know that we will have growth. We're very focused right now of keeping it close by in Texas, because at the beginning we want to make sure, obviously, we have quality control. And so Texas is, I always joke, Texas is a country to itself. We could have 50 franchises. We could have 50 or more franchises in Texas and not even scratch the surface of what's in Texas. But once we have in and around Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, my youngest daughter is getting ready to go to college in Phoenix. I keep joking with my wife, we need to have a franchise owner in Phoenix so that way we can go see my daughter.
Exactly.
And then have a reason to go out to Phoenix on a regular basis. So if anybody in Arizona that wants to own a mobile self-defense company, call me.
That's great. That's fantastic.
There's the sky's the limit for. I'm reading a book right now that's really stretching me, telling me lift my lid of what could be, and so it's always a great question to what are realistic and reasonable goals, and so that's kind of where we are, but
I think it's great to think big, Robert. We had a gentleman, you're speaking of books, Michael Gerber, he wrote this book called The E-Myth Revisited. And when he was on our show, he said something very profound. He said that, a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't fail because they think too big. They usually fail because they think too small. They just think like 1 unit or something like that. You know what I mean? And here you are, you're thinking. You see the big picture, and I think that's important because, this concept could really work, of course, anywhere here in the States, Canada, and who knows, maybe even international one day, why not? I mean, it could really apply to any location, So, I mean, I could have you back here, in 3 or 5 years, doing this interview again. And, I have a very good feeling that you're going to hit those numbers and maybe even then some, So it's going to be interesting to talk to you again in the future.
Well, and I hope I get to come back in 3 to 5 years and say, hey, you remember when we talked about this and this is where we were.
Exactly. We'll go back to that recording.
Because like I told you before, I love listening. I listen to your podcast, and I've been listening to your podcast. I do a lot of driving around Houston. And I love listening to your podcast, and this was for me, this was one of my bucket list things is to be on your podcast and to be able to tell people about what I am passionate about. I was listening to the one the other day with the gentleman from HEX, listening to his passion about, the Hispanic community and the Latino community and how passionate he was about bringing his services to them. And I said, yeah, that's the same thing. He's doing tax preparation, and he's passionate about that. He gets up every day thinking about that.
Right.
I'm just doing it as a different vehicle. But I want to say thank you.
Right.
I appreciate you having me on the show for sure. It's an honor.
Pleasure, Robert.
It's an honor for me to be in there.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, Robert. What's a good way for our listeners, Robert, to get more information on Silverback? Are there any websites or numbers that you want to direct them to so they can get more information?
Yeah. So our corporate site is silverback-selfdefense.com, and then that's the best way, and they can contact us through that. And then my email is robert@silverback-selfdefense.com, and they can email me directly if there's any questions, and they can look at anything for us. And then there's a link if they're actually looking at the franchise concept. There's a link to the franchise website through our corporate website. That's the best way for me. And then if they really want to see, obviously we're active all over social media. They want to really see what we do. It's really easy to find us.
That's fantastic. Well, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed talking to you today, Robert. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I want to invite you back in the next year or two as you continue to grow, because I think this is a wonderful opportunity.
Well, thank you so much, Marty. I appreciate it.
This has been my pleasure, Robert. And we'll be right back with more franchise interviews.
Coming up on segment 2, you're going to hear what every franchipreneur needs to know before buying a franchise. We're going to play a clip from our popular Great Quotes in Franchising podcast right here on Franchise Interviews.
Franchisers, are you looking to reach aspiring entrepreneurs looking to buy a franchise? Are you looking to reach a highly educated audience on franchising? For over 8 years, Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship through our website, franchiseinterviews.com, where you can hear and read interviews as well as get tips from some of the most successful sources in franchising. Our weekly franchise radio show where each week you get to hear a new interview with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys, and our podcast, Great Quotes in Franchising. For more information, go to franchiseinterviews.com or call us at 610-905-2919. That's 610-905-2919.
Hi everyone, this is Marty McDermott, the president of Franchise Interviews, and welcome to another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising, where each podcast you get to hear a great quote in franchising. We've been hosting Franchise Interviews many years now, and during that time we've had some incredible quotes on the show. Today you're going to get to hear from Joseph Berger, and Joseph is the president of You Got Maids. And Joseph said something on the show that we haven't heard, interesting enough, in 650 shows. He described franchising as an open book, but we're going to let Joseph explain why. So here we go. You were kind of I guess you could say you're almost born into franchising, Joseph. I mean, you've been exposed to it seems like most of your life. What do you like most about franchising?
Yeah, and you're right. I've been around franchising for a while. I like to tell people I started when I was 7. I started answering phones and folding boxes at Domino's. Started at 25 cents an hour with a free soda, as much as I could drink, and worked up from there. And what I love about it, what we do, I see where entrepreneurship, where small business ownership has helped my family. You know, my dad's from Northeast Philly, row homes. My mom wasn't much better off, and they've been able to really just turn their stars around and build a really good life for all of us. And I love working with franchisees because I get to be a part of them doing that for their family, and that's just inspiring every day.
It's inspiring what you just said, Joseph, because, I know that area, of Philadelphia. I get down to Philly, every so often. And I think you're right. It's one of the things that impresses me too, Joseph, is that, a lot of people, I think they want to get into entrepreneurship, but they don't know how to, right? And I think franchising, allows them that ability to become an entrepreneur, doesn't it?
Absolutely. One of the things we like to say in the process is imagine you have to take a really hard test, and this test determines everything.
Right.
But if you're doing it with a franchise, it's open book. We've already made the mistakes. We've already found the opportunities. We've laid out all the processes, and we hone it every day. I mean, all of our new idea, we still are updating. It's never going to be done. We're getting all of our great ideas from our franchisees now. But you can start off with that rather than opening your doors and how do I get maids? How do I get clients? How do I keep them?
Right. That's terrific. I've never heard that analogy in 650 shows, Joseph, but it makes sense. I like how you called franchising an open book, because you're right. When a lot of people do get into entrepreneurship, there's a lot of things that they just don't know, and they make a lot of mistakes. And, sometimes some of those mistakes, are detrimental to, their business. So, to call it an open book, I think that's really very clever.
If you'd like to hear that whole interview with Joseph Berger of You Got Maids, all you have to do is go to franchiseinterviews.com. Simply go to our franchise interviews by category page and go to our cleaning category, or you can simply go to our franchises listed alphabetically page. And lastly, we just want to thank everyone for making this podcast, our Great Quotes in Franchising podcast, such a big hit. And we'll see you again soon with another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising from Franchise Interviews. Take care, everyone.
What better place to learn nursing than at one of the top teaching hospitals in the country? St. Luke's School of Nursing, the oldest continuously operating school of nursing in the nation, will hold an open house on Thursday, May 2nd from 6 to 8 p.m. Tour their facility, meet faculty and current students, explore the curriculum and simulation lab, and learn about the admissions and financial aid process. Get your questions answered. Visit sluhn.org/SON to learn more.
Some people take the straight path in life. But at Arizona State University, we respect your twists and turns. They make our online students more driven to excel in their professional lives. That's why our personalized suite of services empowers you with innovative resources and staff that sticks with you. Make your next turn with one of our 300-plus programs at ASU, #1 in innovation for 9 consecutive years. Visit us at asuonline.asu.edu to learn more.